These following 4 interviews are a part of the Oklahoma Historical Society's Oral History Program, Living Legends Collection. There is no original date given for any one of these 4 interviews. Also, the interviewer is unidentified on these tapes. The 4 gentlemen interviewed are Mr. Owen Covel, that's capital C-O-V-E-L, Mr. Ausley Welch, that's capital A-U-S-L-E-Y, capital W-E-L-C-H, Mr. Sam Johnson, and Mr. Eldo Smith, that's capital E-L-D-O, Smith. And these gentlemen were formerly students of the Cherokee Male Seminary in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. This material is being re-recorded on December the 16th, 1988 for inclusion in the permanent collections of the Oral History Program by Judith Michener.
Mr. Covel, would you please tell us where you were born and who your parents were and the date of your birth?
I was born in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, IT then. It was Indian Territory. My father was named John Henry Covel, and my mother was named Elizabeth Covel. And I was born down at the present site of the armory on what was then called Bear Creek.
What day was it, sir? Do you remember?
It was December 21st, 1891.
Where did your parents originally come from?
Well, they were born here in Indian Territory. My father was born on the campus of Northeastern State College. There was a log cabin just directly in front of the Math and Science building near the old cedar tree. I think the cedar tree was in the backyard. And there's a picture, pen and ink sketch of this done by me in the museum at Northeastern State College.
Do you remember anything about your childhood that you might like to relate?
Oh, no, I just remember being a boy growing up, getting spankings and one thing and another. I had a very good time. Always had a good horse and saddle, and pair of spurs, and so forth, as boys at that age and time needed or wanted. And there's nothing special, I guess.
Did you get up pretty early in the morning and start the day off?
Well, I got up about 6 o'clock and started the routine day's work. I had to do the chores around the yard, carrying the wood, feed the chickens, and so forth.
Fine. Well, let's go on to your days there at the Cherokee Male Seminary. Do you remember what was the date that you started school there at the seminary?
I don't remember exactly the dates, but I think it was 1907 and 8 that I attended the male seminary, and part of the time I attended as a day pupil. We walked that distance, about 1.5 miles to school and 1.5 miles back, but most of the time I boarded out there. I had 2 boys in a room, and our room had a fireplace so we could smoke cigarettes very easily without getting caught. And I just went through the natural routine of the school, going to school and doing what I was told. And they had a military organization out there, and I was the bugler. That's about all I can remember.
Do you remember what some of the courses you took were in school?
Well, we did. I was in the grades, and we just took the regular grade courses, English and math and grammar, they called it then. Just the regular courses that they offered at the school.
Do you recall about any of your teachers? Anything that you remember about any of them?
Oh, not particularly. All the boys were very personally acquainted with the teachers, and the teachers seemed like one of the boys. We got along fine.
Do you remember what you did in any of your spare time? Spare time, what did you do for recreation?
Oh, in my spare time, I went down and watched them practice football or baseball, according to the season. And we used to shoot doogies out in the yard. One thing or another. We didn't have any particular hobbies then. We just did what we...
Did they have a good football team there?
Oh yes, they had a very good football team.
Do you remember any of the star players' names by any chance?
Well, yes, Elijah Scraper, and I know my uncle, Paddy Mays they call him, and Ching Smith, and I don't know, I can't remember right now.
Yeah. Do you remember any of the teams that they played? Who did they play when they played football?
Well, they played the other Indian National College around, Jones Academy at Hartshorn. They played, and they played Fayetteville, Arkansas one year, I remember.
When you were at school, did you have to go to church
Yes, the boys that boarded there were formed in companies and marched over to the church of their choice at Tahlequah, at the city, and I went to the Methodist church.
on Sundays, did you have picnics and stuff?
No, on Sundays, we just did it around, wait for the bell to ring for us to come to supper or dinner or whatever it might be. We didn't have any particular activities.
Where did you eat your meals? Did you eat your meals on campus, or did you come into Tahlequah?
Well, the boarders out there ate their meals at 6 and 12 and 5, I think, between 5 and 6.
What kind of food did they serve?
Oh, regular boarding house food, beans and molasses.
Was it good?
Oh yes, we liked it.
Let's see. When you were a student there, do you ever remember any special visitors that came to visit the seminaries?
Oh, members of the Cherokee Board of Education visited occasionally. A.S. Wiley was one of them. I don't remember so many of them. They visited just routine to us. We didn't pay much attention to it.
Who were your roommates while you were there at school?
I don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember, huh? I thought they might be lifelong friends.
Long time ago.
Do you remember the burning of the male seminary? Do you remember when it burned?
No, yes. I remember when it burned. I wasn't a student there at that time. It was a coeducational institution at that time. But I was, at the time it burned, I happened to be up at the old depot on Choctaw Street. I was driving in a little trunk wagon and hauled trunks over town. And in those days we didn't have modern transportation, and we always had to haul trunks from the depot to the rooming houses, and I did that.
But you don't actually remember. You remember what caused it by any chance? The burning of the school. Do you remember what caused it?
No, I don't know. I have my ideas about it.
What would you think about that?
Some of the boys sneaked out of church sometime, once in a while, if they had a chance. They didn't want that long walk to Tahlequah and back. So I just imagined some boys were up in the cupola and probably dropped a cigarette or a match or something. I don't know. Nobody's ever solved a problem.
No, I know that. What did you do after you got out of school? You said you hauled trunks.
Well, I did that for a while I was at summertime. We used to have summer normals here at the college, and I used to haul trunks during the summertime. After that,
How much were you paid?
I was paid 25 cents a trunk. Thought I was getting rich.
So the more trunks you hauled, the more you got paid.
Yeah.
Fine. When you were a student there at the male seminary, were you allowed to date girls from the female seminary?
They had receptions over at the female seminary once a month, and we all went over and listened to a program and talked to our best girl after the program for a while. That's about all.
Do you remember who your best girl was at that time?
Not too many of them.
Did you, as a student, did you have a curfew? Did you have to be inside at such and such a time?
Oh, we had a bedtime. What time we go to bed out there? Ausley? About 8? My friend Ausley, yes, it's about 8 o'clock. I don't remember.
Do you remember anything concerning the building of the female seminary here on campus, Old Seminary?
No, I was before my time.
Let's see, what else could we ask? Well, while you were a student at the male seminary, what would you consider as the most important thing that happened to you during that time?
Well, I don't know. Football games, I guess.
The football.
I'm interested in
You
football.
were interested in sports. Did you ever participate in any sports?
No, I was too little.
Too small. One thing I'd like to ask you about is the Cherokees, and they use the gallows downtown, to hang people. Did you ever witness a hanging yourself here in Tahlequah?
Yes, I saw one fellow hung, and my granddad was high sheriff at the time, so I got to witness one hanging.
Do you remember any stories that your grandfather might have told you about while he was sheriff?
No, I don't.
What on the day of the hanging, what do you recall about the events of the day?
Well, I recall that my mother lifted me up so I could see the hanging. I was that small.
Let's see. Tahlequah, of course, was the capital of the Cherokee Nation. Do you ever remember seeing a chief that was inaugurated, or?
Yes, I saw several chiefs. In fact, the matter, my daddy was interpreter for 3 chiefs: Joel B. Mays, Samuel Mays, and one other, I can't call his name. The interpreter, sometimes they had a chief that couldn't speak English, and sometimes they had a chief that couldn't speak Cherokee, so my dad was interpreting his speech, whichever language it be.
What do you recall about that day? Was it a really festive occasion? Was it a big thing to do?
Oh yes, it was a big thing. All of the citizens around that could get here came in, brought the dinner, and had dinner on the grounds. It was a big occasion. They had a platform and bunting and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. How did Tahlequah look? What did the town look like when you were a student at the seminary?
Well, I guess I could write a book on that. I remember we had dirt streets and board sidewalks, and around the Capitol Square there were large posts with a chain strung all around it, so you could tie your horses to that chain while you did your business.
Do you remember what graduation day was like there at the seminary, the day you graduated? Do you remember?
I didn't graduate seminary. I finished the 8th grade there and went on to Peacock Military College in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, what did you do there? What did you do there at the military academy?
Well, I just followed the military routine, and I rose to be a cadet major there. And
well, I guess that's about all the questions that I have to ask you.
I have a story about this old cabin that my grandfather was built over and on the campus. It was told to me, now I can't speak for its truth, but I suppose it was, when he died, and that day and time they laid him out to cool the corpse, and they laid him out on the porch. And this being out in the woods, they heard a panther scream, and as this screams of the panther became nearer, the people moved the corpse in the building, and about the time they got him inside and shut the door, the panther smashed the door. That was told to me. I don't know.
Fine, sir.
Say, just a minute.
Go ahead.
I believe I told you though that the picture of this was in a museum up there.
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would
Oh, I started listening to that thing.
okay, would you please tell us where you were born?
Well, my name first.
Yeah.
My name's Ausley Welch, and I was born in what was once known as the Delaware District, and on Cowskin Prairie. My father was named John Cobb Welch. My mother was named Elsie Butler, Nee Butler. And I was born in 1891. Lived on Cowskin Prairie just until statehood. After they allotted the land, while we got our allotment there on the place. And about that time, I started attending school out here at the Male Seminary. I was out there until that school burned, and I came into the Northeastern State College.
Larry Moore.
And
Mr. Jennings' office.
I
Larry
guess
Moore. Please report to Mr.
that our
Jennings'
parent,
office.
or my parents, my father, was one of the first ones that was here when they opened the Female Seminary. And he added to, they didn't have enough money to furnish all the rooms. And in order to have a room for my older sister and a niece of his, he furnished the room, bought the bed, the mattress, and so forth. And I think she went to school there until she married about 1890. And then my younger sister attended school here then until about 1901. But I stayed here at the Northeastern until 1912.
Do you remember when your parents came to Oklahoma Territory, Indian Territory?
My father's people came to this country in the spring of 1897. And they landed down at Stillwell. They lived there a few years, and then they moved up on what is known as Cowskin Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother's folks lived on between Jay and Spavino, a little place they called Moe's Ridge. My mother was born there, and they lived there during the Civil War. And my mother and father were married in 1873.
Fine.
Mm.
When you were a student at the Male Seminary, do you recall some of the courses that you took?
The main course was getting down to breakfast, I believe it was. Well, anyhow, we
That's
had,
true today, too.
yeah. Anyway, we had plenty to eat, and we had good instructors. And I know one thing we did do, we had to do a drill, close order drill there every day, once a day, sometimes at noon and sometimes early of a morning. But I don't know anything that's really interesting, knowing when we get a chance to come to the Female Seminary, or sometimes we get a chance to come over here, well, but that was very important. Then, of course, May Day, or the day that May the 7th, while I was born, was an important day with us because we got to go on picnics.
Do you recall some of your teachers and what they were like? Was
Well,
it strict?
I don't think we had any of what you'd call real strict teachers. They were firm in what they did. I believe W.T. Scott and Walter Thompson and one or two others that was out there, but well, Jack Brown taught there after he finished. He taught a year, maybe more, out there.
Could you tell me what some of the things that you did in your spare time for leisure, recreation?
Well, one thing we'd do, we'd go out south of this Female Seminary, we weren't allowed to go very far, but sometimes we did go out, and there was what they call the old Ross hill up back south of the school there, and there was a big orchard on top of that. We sometimes would go up there visiting around the orchard, and of course carry home a few apples. And that was about the main thing.
On Sunday mornings, you were marched to church, weren't you?
Yes, we did. We
Could
came.
you tell me about that?
Well, we all had to have a haircut and have on our uniforms and ready to come to school. Of course, we had our morning service, or what we call Bible service, was in the chapel there, and then we came on over here, and we were allowed to go to whatever church we cared to go to.
Where did you eat your meals? Did you eat your meals at the school? Or
Oh yes, we ate there in the building, in the dining room.
What kind of food did they serve?
Well, just the good old sign that'll stick to your ribs is just beans and potatoes and so forth.
Was it good food?
Oh yes, we had some good cooks out there.
Do you recall any unusual things that happened on the campus when you were a student? Any special people that visited the campus, or?
Well, I don't recall of anyone just at present, but I do know we would, they'd have some dignitaries here in town, and sometimes they'd send a detail from out there, a uniformed detail in town to kind of act as receivers for the dignitaries that came to town.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, we never had anything out there that ever amounted to anything that I know of. Sometimes we'd have a little picnic, or what you might call it, but we were always at night. The girls would come walk over there from here, and when we came over here, well, we walked from there over here, or from there out into town.
You remember the dates that you were a student out at the seminary? From what dates, what years you went to school there?
Well, I think the first year I went there was in I believe I went there for a while in 1905. Just a short time, and then I didn't go back then that after Christmas, and then went back the next year and stayed the full 9 months. And I stayed till 1907, and then I think I missed some time in there along about latter part of 1978, and then the next time I went to school was out here at the college.
You said 1907. Do you remember what Statehood Day was like in 1907?
Very well, very well.
Could you relate that to me, please?
Well, I don't know. I think the boys came over here. They had a little recital or something over here, and I think they had a marriage, perhaps. It was, state of Oklahoma and Indian Territory, I think it was. Of course, it wasn't all of us that got to come to that. It was just those that were invited.
Do you recall the burning of the seminary?
I wasn't there. I was at home when it burned.
Do you remember anything about it, though?
All I know is that I just heard it through, I believe, by the paper, I think it was.
Yeah.
Of course, we didn't have any television or anything of that sort then.
Were you permitted to date a student from the female seminary?
Only on these special
Special
occasions, that's all.
Yeah. And then you said you were required to be in the building by 10 at night?
Yes.
Do you remember anything about the female seminary here on campus? Any of the building of it or anything?
All I know about it is my father. Well, we have a picture at home of the dedication of the building. My father was here at the dedication, and the picture shows the building taken from down toward town back this way. I don't remember just what the date of the dedication was, but I know he was down here and got one of the pictures.
What did you do in the summer?
At our home. At home?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot of things to do on a farm, I'll tell you that for sure. I kept pretty busy, I think.
You get up pretty early?
Oh yes, we got up early. Of course, when we went anywhere, of course, we always went horseback. We had no other way to go on horseback.
Did you have a pretty good horse?
Oh yes, we always had good horses. And I guess I don't remember of anything that was special.
While you were a student here at the seminary, what would you consider as the most important event that happened to you personally?
To me personally?
Yes, sir.
No, I can't tell you. I'm not. Oh, I guess Halloween. I think I was tied up in a Halloween deal out there one time. I got into that.
Could you tell me about that?
Oh, we didn't do too awful much. We just kind of tormented the teachers around there a little. I think we tied one in the room and carried some hay from the barn up in the halls, and that's about all we did do. Nothing serious at all.
Do you remember any of the athletic events that went on at the seminary?
Yes, I do. I remember several good ball games.
Football games?
Yes, I remember Jones Academy team playing there, which was one of the outstanding ones, I guess, in the whole country then. And the Jones Academy boys with the Choctaw School, and they were great athletes, and of course our boys were too, what we thought was the best, and I guess they're hard to beat because they played the University of Arkansas, and I guess they were pretty good players.
Did you ever yourself participate in athletics?
No.
Do you remember any of the hangings in downtown Tahlequah?
No.
You never attended the hangings? Did you ever attend an inauguration of a Cherokee chief?
No. No, we lived too far up in the northeast part of the country then. See, we were only 12 miles from the Missouri line, and we didn't come down. The family didn't. Of course, my daddy was active in the Cherokee affairs, but he would make trips down here quite often. But I never did. I never was down here.
That's can you relate what graduation day was like? Did you graduate from the seminary?
No, I didn't. No.
Did you ever attend a graduation exercise?
Oh yes, we usually had them here in town. They never had anything out there. Oh, sometimes they'd have a little something to do out there, but the main issuing of the diplomas and so forth was done here in town.
Can you tell me how Tahlequah looked at the time that you were a student? What was it like?
Oh, gee, there wasn't very much between here and downtown then. Only just a few little, I believe, old wagon yard and a lumber yard, and maybe one or two other little places along till you got down to the main town. That was all there was down on this main part of town. And there was no pavement. There's all wood sidewalks. What sidewalks there were was wooden. But I was around Tahlequah quite a bit from then on, quite often.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Welch, for it.
Yes.
Fine.
Born in May the 27th, 1892, in Mays County, Pryor, Oklahoma.
Do you remember anything about your parents? Where they were
Well,
born, where they came
my father came from North Carolina. I don't know, about 1890, about 1885. He died when I was 3 weeks old, I was told, from a sunstroke. And my mother was killed by lightning when I was 11 months old, so I was the only child.
Give me the date that when you were a student at the Female Seminary.
It was 1906.
And then when did you?
I went there just 1 year.
Just 1 year?
Yes.
Could you recall some of the courses you were enrolled in there at school?
No, I was in about the 5th grade and just English and mathematics and things.
Do you recall any of your teachers?
Claude Mitchell.
What kind of teachers were they?
They were good teachers.
Good? Were they strict?
Strict as they could be.
Really?
But you had to toe the mark or you didn't stay.
Could you tell me some of the things you did in your spare time?
I went as a day scholar. I didn't board out there. We went from town here, walked daily from, a bunch of us would always walk out there every day and come back the same day.
Where did you stay here in Tahlequah?
With my grandfather who reared me.
Mm-hmm. Did he live outside of Tahlequah or did he live here?
Live here in town.
And so, how early did you have to get up in the morning to get out to school?
Oh, about 5 o'clock. But it wouldn't take us over an hour to walk out there. It's best about 2.5 miles out there.
Did it get a little chilly in the wintertime?
Well, I don't remember. It's been too long ago.
Do you recall any unusual things that happened to you while you were on the campus, or any unusual visitors that came to the campus?
No, I don't remember a thing.
Do you remember the burning of the seminary? Do you
The
remember
male seminary? Yes, I remember it. 1910.
Do you remember anything about it?
No, I don't. We were in school here to Northeastern when it burned.
Do you have any personal feelings yourself about how you think it got started, the fire got started?
No, I don't know a thing about it.
Were you required to be in the building at a certain... Well, you didn't live there.
No, we didn't live there. No.
What did your grandfather do here in town?
He ran the lumber business.
Really?
Yes.
Did he have a pretty thriving business?
Oh, yes, that's a good business.
Did you work for him?
Yes, we worked through the summertime when we weren't in school. We helped build sidewalks. He did a lot of contract work.
Let's see. You lived here with your grandfather.
Yes, sir.
And what do you think, while you were a student at the seminary, what do you think was the most important thing that happened to you?
Well, just...
Let's see. You lived here with your grandfather.
Yes, sir.
And what do you think, while you were a student at the seminary, what do you think was the most important thing that happened to you?
Well, just obedience. We was taught obedience, and we had to toe the mark. That's good for anybody to know what.
Yeah, it helped
That's
you
you
through the
betcha.
rest of life.
That's right.
Do you remember any of the athletic events that went on there at the school?
Well, I played football and baseball. Yes, and it's about all athletics that participated in. I think was football and baseball.
Since you lived here in Tahlequah, could you tell me a little bit about what the town looked like?
Well, it's been so long ago, but there wasn't much down here. It's just a wide place in the road. But they had dirt streets and board sidewalks, and finally they went to building concrete blocks and making buildings and foundations. It's been quite a town in the last 65 years.
What was the largest town around Tahlequah? Do you remember the largest, biggest town?
Well, I guess Muskogee was the nearest big town. Tahlequah was always only about 3,000 or 4,000 at those days.
Yeah. Did you ever witness the inauguration of a chief here in Tahlequah?
No.
Do you ever remember anyone being
No,
sworn or
no.
anything?
Just heard about it, and I didn't see it done.
What did you hear about?
Oh, where they used to trip those things, and I never much about it.
Were you ever here when they had graduation exercises of any of your classes?
No.
Well, I guess that's about all I have to ask you. I'd like
Well,
to thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know too much.
That's fine, sir.
Run better than $12,000 a year salary.
Okay.
Engineer.
Okay. Mr. Smith, would you please tell me where you were born and when you were born?
I was born at Big Cabin, Oklahoma, or Indian Territory rather, 1894, Juneteenth, 19th day of June.
Do you remember anything about your parents?
Yes.
When did they come to Oklahoma? Where did they come from?
Well, they come from Tennessee. My parents did originally, Cherokees. Settled on Cowskin Prairie, up close to Southwest City, Missouri, in Indian Territory. And my grandmother was Lena Adair, Chief Adair's sister, full-blood Indian, on my mother's side. And she married a Fields, the old George Fields stock, other Cherokee Indians. And my mother was the oldest child of theirs.
Can you tell me a little bit about what life was like when you were a child?
Well, I was born and raised there, as I say, up there on the farm, a ranch, small place. And I remember Dad didn't seem to have too much sense at the time, but he good hard Indian worker. And when he allotted us all, he lived to be 87 years old and left fairly well fixed and educated all of us boys. Went to country school, but in 1906, 7, and 8, I come down to the old seminary because we didn't have much schools up there. And I left the latter part of 1908, and I was not here when it burned.
Do you remember any of the courses you were enrolled in out there at school?
Well, at that age, I was just course, just A, B, and C.
Do you recall any of your teachers, what they were like, your teachers?
I had some mighty fine teachers. One of them that I always remembered, and I've had a lot of association with him since, even today, is Jack Brown. Very young fellow. Roomed on the same floor I did, and a very nice fellow. Then we had Professor Logan, and his wife was there, and Dr. J.N. Clark was in superintendent school out there at that time. Then we had Mr. and Miss Murdoch, and they were all very, very fine, likable, and understanding people.
Were they strict? Did you think they were hard?
No, as I say, they were understanding people. They were nice. They had what we were supposed to abide by, but they understood.
Did you like school?
I liked fine.
Could you tell me some of the things that you did in your spare time?
Well, sometimes there's a big strawberry farm up on the hill just south of the old seminary, and we'd go over and pick strawberries. People name of Lescos. And we'd do that. And another time we'd have our little ball games down there and sneak off over in Rube Ross's orchard joining us, steal his apples.
That's another man I was telling you about there. You ate your meals there at the
Yeah, we had mess hall.
They're pretty good meals?
Had good meals, good substantial meals.
Yeah, what kind of food did they serve?
Well, we always, see, they raised a good part of it there. We always had all kinds of vegetables and apples and stuff for that, and raised our own hogs and had our own cows to milk and butter. We had it right there on the place.
Do you remember anything unusual ever happening on the campus? Anyone special coming and visiting it while you were a student?
No, not especially there. We always had an awful good football team.
Yeah. Did you participate?
No, I was too small for it. I was too small.
Could you tell me a little bit about the football team or baseball team?
Well,
Anything you remember?
one of the boys, one of the Ross boys, become a national pitcher. Lived right out by there, Bruce Ross. He was national. I believe Bruce still living, but he went on up to the big leagues. And the football players, some of them went to other colleges, Indian colleges, Carlisle, and other places.
Do you remember any of the teams they played?
Any of which?
Any of the teams they played?
Well, no, I don't. I was too small to remember much about that.
Were you permitted to date students
Charlie King, please report to
from the
recreation.
Female Seminary?
Yes, we have been allowed to come over here on Sunday and see it. I had some cousins, girl cousins here, 3 or 4 different tribes of the Fielders and some Smiths and others. We'd come over and visit them on Sundays, and we'd sneak off at night lots of times and come over and crawl under the back fence, and we allowed to date them, but we didn't get caught.
Did you ever get caught?
No, thank God. Some of the boys did, not me.
What happened to them when they got caught?
I never did know. One of the unusual things about the old seminary, I lived on the 3rd floor at the middle room of the building, and Jack Brown lived up at the end of the hall. But we had the only room that you could come in and go out onto the roof. And go out onto the roof, you could climb up to the old lookout chimney and go down the old lookout chimney to the basement. And then go out through the tunnel about half a mile over to the west, to the south, and get away from the school.
Do you remember anything about curfew? Did you have to be in the building at a certain time?
Well, we was usually in the building when we went to class or that. We were supposed to go to bed right after that.
Were you usually tired and ready to go to bed, or?
Well, sometimes like all boys.
Yeah. Do you remember anything about the building of the Female Seminary here on campus?
Well, it was sure when I came down here, it had been built, replaced the other one. And we come to town every Saturday, and naturally we'd come over to the building. We had meetings over here quite often.
Do you remember the marches into church on Sunday morning?
Yes, sir. We'd come into church every Sunday morning. Usually went to Presbyterian church. Our bunch did that time. They alternated though. And we'd come in and naturally sat as close to the girls as we were allowed.
You could go to the church of your choice, so when you came
Oh,
to
yes.
town. What would you consider as the most important thing that happened to you while you were a student at the seminary?
At seminary? Well, that would be hard to say, because I was, say, rather small, but I always admired the uniforms and being there. Things we'd have our different things. I always thought it was a very, very fine building, very fine place.
You liked it a great deal.
I did. I enjoyed it.
Could you tell me what Tahlequah looked like at the time that you were going
Well,
to school?
Tahlequah was, you might say, about this one main street down here, as I can remember. Little buildings of different types as we go down the street.
Dirt streets?
Dirt street, gravel or dirt, mostly, of course, there's a lot of natural gravel. I remember one day when we were in here, started back home, and that hotel down the south part of town had some large columns out in front, and one group of men that lived here out south of town, and another group which was their enemies had a shooting scrape there. So we saw a horse get shot from under it and one man killed there. We can't mention the names, or won't, because a lot of the ancestors are still here and were my schoolmates later.
Do you recall graduation day of the seminary? Do you remember?
Nothing, only for the older students.
Was it a pretty festive occasion?
Yes, it's always folks coming in. Quite a thing.
The Cherokees used the gallows here for certain crimes, and since they were located in downtown Tahlequah, did you ever witness a hanging?
I never witnessed any. My father had been a United States Marshal, and he told me about a lot of them.
Do you recall any stories he told you?
Well,
my great-grandfather was too.
they were down someplace in here hunting Henry Starr at one time, and at that time they had wagons and horses. The wagons, at night they would chain their prisoners one by one down on the ground, and they camped down here close to Poto someplace in that neighborhood, close to where Henry Starr lived, folks lived. And his superior said that the next morning early that they were going out
and get Henry Starr because he's home. And my father told him, he said, I'll go get Henry Starr if you'll let me. I'll bring him back. Otherwise, said, some of us are going to get killed because he knew Henry Starr. And they finally agreed to let him go. No, none of them go with him. He's surrounded. He rode up the house that morning. He could talk Cherokee. He rode up the house, got off, hung his 6-shooter up on a saddle horn, told him where he was. They went on in the house. They was eating breakfast, just daylight. Said he wanted to see Henry, and they said Henry wasn't there. He said, well, they know he's in here, and said, I want to talk to him. And told him they knew who he was, knew my father. So Henry come in, told him, he said, Henry, said, they got the country surrounded, and they want you. He said, I'd like for you to go with me. Said, I'll see if nothing will hurt to happen to you. So he agreed to go, and they took him into Fort Smith, turned him over to the authorities at Fort Smith, and he was out of jail before they got out of town. Your grandfather know about that.
Yeah, he was.
What's his name?
His name was Thomas.
Thomas, where'd he live?
He lived over in Madison County, Arkansas.
Now or dead?
He's still alive now.
My father's dead.
Yeah, he lives in Wagner now. He's up around 88 years old now.
Mine was 87 years.
You recall anything else you'd like to tell us about?
I believe that's about all.
I'm sort of interested in your
Big
hat. You're in your hat. You're a veteran of World
War
War I.
Veteran of World War I.
What outfit did you serve in?
I served in the 9th Division headquarters, located in San Antonio. And I went with a group of boys here. Most of them went overseas right away, but they kept me there most of the time.
You never did go overseas?
I never did. But we have now this organization, Veterans of World War I. Originally was started just for the older people to get together and visit. But it's turned into quite a problem now of helping the older World War I boys and their widows securing what they actually need. So many of them don't know what to do nor how to get it. Just instantly, a man in Dallas, been a First National Bank for years, raised a family and sent them all through university. One of his sons, a leading dentist in Dallas, had his own home there, was in World War I, didn't need anything, never did join the Legion or any other organization, and they lived there, and he became ill and kept getting worse and worse. Now he's solely dependent on somebody to help him. And you can't get a pension or can't get any help unless you've been in a veterans hospital. But through his doctor and through our work, he doesn't know anything through that work. We got him in that. Now we have got him a pension and got him $100 a month aid for her to help take care of him. And he was destitute, you might say. And there's just any number of those cases that don't know what. They're trying to organize one here in Tahlequah, the state of Oklahoma. The Department Commander Knight is here now, and we're going to meet this afternoon to try to organize a barracks here in Tahlequah. And the sole purpose mostly is to help the needed of the World War I veterans and their dependents.
That's very good. Do you remember? What do you think about the draft dodgers of now, the ones that evade the draft now?
Well, I think these draft dodgers or these people fighting like those in Washington, I think that our law is too lenient on them. Because we have laws, they go up there to ask us to stop a war and disobey every law that we have in that. And the draft dodgers is no more than just a slacker to me into that. They expect us or our kids. My daughter is a graduate. She's a retired major. She graduated this school here in 1942. And ever so many of them that are doing the same thing, they don't know even what they're asking for into that. They just somebody get on a soapbox and start something. That's the whole thing.
You mentioned the term slacker. I remember that in my Oklahoma history class that term was referred to people that in the First World War that wouldn't share their responsibility in the
That's it.
in the load. And did you have a few draft dodgers in? Did you have a few people that resisted?
We had quite a number of them. In World War One, I remember one incident out in West Texas, the Germans had moved in there and mostly only spoke German, out between Ballinger and San Angelo, a big community. And these boys took them to the army, and they'd run off and come back out there on those farms. And a man come through the country there one time in a horse and buggy late at night, German. He couldn't talk anything but, he couldn't talk English. He was German. He couldn't talk German. He was English. And he stayed all night. When they went to bed that night, they began to talk about the boys had to take food out in German out to the boys. So the next morning he got up and told them, "Better go get the boys. He's taking them back to camp." We had a lot of slackers those days, but not in proportion to what we have now.
What do you think about the students of today?
The what?
The students on the college campuses today. You hear
I
about
think the students, a majority of them, are a mighty fine bunch of people. We hear of the minority bunch causing trouble. But the students are no different than they used to be, I don't think. They're from good families, most of them. And the ones that go wrong is just from not being mature enough to not listen to propaganda. As a whole, I'd say 95% of the students are fine class of people. And I don't disagree with the way they dress. That's their privilege. And I think if they want to wear long hair, that's their privilege. So long as they behave themselves and go along with the principles of our nation.
What do you think about Northeastern State College today? Are you proud of the way it's developed?
Well, after I finished the seminary there, I came back here in 1912. And I finished up to 1915, I finished up here, what they had. Then I left, went to Muskogee, and then went on to the company and went to the Army. My wife's father was very prominent here in the Tahlequah. He was Judge Cherokee. And most old-timers know him. She's 9 years younger than I. She had done all of her education right here, except she went to Kid Key and to Columbia University. Later, after we married, she went to school. I come back here to World War I and found her again, a mighty good-looking girl she is yet, and married her. Then we had a daughter. I was all over the country, traveling with different outfits. And I was federal land bank appraiser on Grand River Dam when she finished high school at 16. So we moved to Tahlequah in 1939. And she graduated here at this school, Northeastern, 1942. She went to work civil service. Her name Maureen Smith in that class. She took a little civil service and then went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was architectural engineering. Took a year out there, and they wanted to come back to civil service, and she told them she couldn't quit school, so the old colonel talked to her and she joined the Army after she got out. So she put in 3.5 years in the Army, Engineering Corps, 21 months of it in Tokyo, come back then out of service, and she's come back as a first lieutenant. She's kept on now till she's a major, and is working for TI at better than $12,000 a year, Texas Instrument. So all Northeastern people, all graduates, wife, myself, and mother.
What do you think of the college now?
I think
today?
it's mighty good. I'm mighty glad to see the progress it's made. And you lost a mighty good president this last time, but I believe you've got another one because he's been down in our neighborhood at Commerce, Texas. And I met him a while ago and talked to him, and he knows right where we live.
What do you think that maybe we could do here at Northeastern to make it a better school?
That would be a hard question because I think you're doing about everything you can. The school has progressed over here and has an enrollment that you can hardly take care of. And I think the only thing to do is the cooperation of the students and the faculty. I don't mean the ones that are trying to raise Cain, but the student body. And you'll find that the faculty go along with anything that is right, I think.
Right. I'd like to thank you.
Might have said too much if they didn't want, but that's just what it is.
That's fine, sir.